Opening the center, this aggressive pawn thrust immediately seeks to dominate crucial central squares and prepare for swift piece development. Embracing the Sicilians' inherent imbalance, Black immediately challenges White's central pawn and aims for asymmetrical play. Building a solid pawn chain prepares a central push, but temporarily restricts the queenside development. Challenging White's central pawn immediately, Black seeks to disrupt their planned pawn structure and open lines for active piece play. Opening the center now invites sharp exchanges and simplifies the position towards a potentially dynamic middle game. Instantly reclaiming the pawn, Black's queen asserts central influence, preparing for an energetic skirmish. Opening the center this way seizes the initiative, building a commanding pawn phalanx while challenging the exposed queen. Developing the knight here initiates piece activity and contests the center, a logical step after the queen's foray. Developing the knight now controls central squares and prepares kingside castling, an essential part of solidifying White's position. Developing the knight to its natural outpost, this square immediately pressures White's central pawn structure and enhances Black's piece activity in the unfolding skirmish. Developing the bishop to a central square enhances piece activity and prepares for kingside castling. Shattering the central pawn structure, Black gambles on initiative, forcing immediate tactical calculations for White. Releasing the central tension opens lines for both sides, but grants White a tempo advantage in piece development. Exchanging queens now simplifies, leading towards an endgame where Black's central pawn majority will be a key factor. The king, now exposed, ventures into the fray, initiating a delicate endgame dance where each tempo is precious. Unleashing the knight on g4 seems a bit premature, potentially sacrificing valuable development for a fleeting attack. Developing the knight to this square opens up lines for the rook and prepares for kingside castling, aiming to solidify White's central control. Dislodging the knight opens a diagonal and forces the king to a less secure square. Opening the f-file offers a path for the rook, but leaves your king rather exposed. Developing the bishop to attack the knight creates immediate tension and seeks to untangle Black's pieces. Developing the knight aggressively to a central outpost, aiming to disrupt Black's pawn structure and create attacking opportunities. Unleashing the king onto the queen's side opens up dangerous avenues for attack. Securing the king's flank with tempo, this defensive maneuver seeks to consolidate after a flurry of exchanges, anticipating potential attacks on the open d-file. Bringing the bishop to a diagonal aiming at White's kingside offers active piece play and potential counterplay against the exposed monarch. Finally, the bishop gets active, aiming to support the coming knight maneuver and prepare for queenside operations. Developing the bishop to an active square, it defends the knight and prepares for further pawn advances on the queen side. Probing the queen side, this ambitious pawn push seeks to create space and restrict Black's bishop. Reclaiming the d-file, the rook prepares to eye the unprotected kingside castled structure. Repositioning the rook to the open file will pressure Black's queenside pawn structure and prepare for potential pawn advances. Expanding on the kingside with g5 creates immediate tension and a pawn storm, but at the cost of weakening your king's shelter significantly. Focusing on the open d-file, White seeks to dislodge Black's rook and claim central dominance. Forcing the king to move again after sacrificing tempo on the rook exchange creates further uncertainty around his safety. Relocating the monarch to this square initiates a cautious endgame, aiming to exploit open files and improve piece activity. Reclaiming the initiative, Black boldly exposes White's uncastled king, aiming for a dynamic advantage. Recasting the king to its hiding place is a prudent defensive measure. Prioritizing king safety now that the queens are off the board is a sensible adjustment for Black. Reclaiming the knight from the queen side, White aims to improve its central influence and potentially connect the rooks. Expanding the queenside pawn structure here aims to create space for the bishop and support a future advance, but it might weaken the pawn chain. Gaining space and improving pawn structure, white aims to prevent further black piece activity on the kingside. Fortifying the queenside pawn structure, black prepares to advance the b-pawn and potentially restrict white's rook activity on the d-file. Asserting control over the dark squares, this move aims to disrupt black's king safety and potentially fork pieces later. Breaking the central pawn chain, black seeks to destabilize white's queenside pawn structure, aiming for active piece play. Exchanging bishops simplifies the position, potentially opening lines for your rook and queen. Opening up that f-file dramatically reshapes the battleground, creating immediate counterplay for your pawns. Seizing the open file for the rook, a crucial step towards activating white's remaining forces in this imbalanced pawn structure. Capitalizing on the open file, black asserts dominance, aiming to connect their rooks and activate their queen. Aggressively targeting the pinned knight opens new avenues for a decisive attack. Recapturing the bishop liberates black's central pawns and opens a vital diagonal for the queen. Sacrificing the pawn opens a vital diagonal for your rook and forces black's king into a precarious spot. The black king boldly steps forward, activating itself in the center. Shifting your monarch towards the center aims to activate him for the approaching endgame battles. Restoring the king to the center, this aims to redeploy for the coming struggles. Activating the rook to an open file aims to disrupt black's pawn structure. Carving out a passed pawn on the queen side is a bold ambition, but it leaves your king dangerously exposed. The knight's journey to e4 creates an immediate threat to black's central pawns and opens pathways for your remaining forces to connect. Reinforcing the pawn chain, black seeks to solidify their queenside structure against the encroaching rook. Asserting control over the open file offers a dynamic counter to black's pawn advance. The knight's central redeployment offers tactical skirmishes, potentially disrupting white's pawn structure and opening avenues for the black king. Clearing the knight's path, this centralizing maneuver aims to occupy a commanding outpost and pressure black's weakened queenside. Shifting the rook to the active d-file opens up potential counterplay, challenging white's initiative. Seizing the passed pawn unravels black's king defenses, opening a direct assault. A desperate attempt to activate the trapped knight, potentially sacrificing material for counterplay on the queenside. The knight's rerouting aims to exploit the exposed black king, seeking active squares. Snatching the knight on b2, you aim to disrupt white's queenside pawns, but it opens lines for their rook. Resigning now would avoid further positional unraveling and a swift material collapse. Sacrificing the rook here is a desperate attempt to dislodge white's dominant knight, but it offers too little compensation. Sacrificing the rook here opens up lines for a king attack, but watch out for black's passed pawn on the queen side. The knight's audacious leap to d3 threatens to unravel white's queen side pawns, potentially creating decisive weakness. Unleashing the rook to the queen side threatens to sweep away black's pawns, creating new attacking avenues. Aggressively pushing the pawn forward opens lines, but beware of white's knight fork potential. Pushing the pawn forward creates a potential passed pawn, but also weakens the kingside defenses significantly. Knight sacrifice galvanizes attack against the exposed monarch, seeking to unravel white's defenses. The king seeks refuge from the storm, retreating to a more secure square amidst the chaos. The knight repositioning to h5 eyeballs the c4 square, hinting at a future disruptive knight fork. Pushing that pawn forward liberates the knight and forces a decision about your king's safety. The king's shelter erodes further, bringing it into the crosshairs of the active rook. Pushing the pawn forward to force the enemy king out into the open is a bold, aggressive step. King's new domain feels precarious, constantly harried by the enemy knight's advanced outposts. Seizing the open file with the rook, white aims to exploit black's vulnerable kingside pawns. Trading the rook here relinquishes pressure on the queenside and simplifies into a losing pawn down endgame. Snatching the pawn simplifies the endgame, bringing the knight into a more active, centralizing position to harass black's weakened pawn structure. The Black King's journey to safety is far from over. A vigilant eye on the open files is crucial. Centralizing this knight offers newfound outposts and threatens to control key diagonals. Aggravating the already precarious position, this king retreat surrenders further central territory and invites immediate danger. White establishes control of the open files and prepares to advance the passed pawn. King's safety is now a critical concern, as Black King steps onto a dangerous open diagonal. Centralizing the knight prepares a decisive pawn push, threatening to unravel Black's scattered forces. The knight's journey to the center aims to disrupt White's pawn structure and activate Black's remaining forces. Pushing the pawns forward now is crucial to secure the queen's side for the final sprint. Seeking respite, the knight dances forward, a surprising gambit for tactical advantage. The king retreats, seeking refuge from the knight's advancing threat. Repositioning the knight offers a chance to potentially fork the rook and pawn, a sharp tactical jab. The monarch endeavors to escape the pawn's relentless advance, seeking safer pastures across the board. Creating a passed pawn, this promotes central pawn action and demands White's immediate attention. Repositioning the king to a more central, secure square is the immediate priority, preparing to activate it further in the endgame. The knight bravely ventures to the edge, hoping to disrupt the white pawns and escape the compromised king's defense. King activation is paramount now. Bringing it to the center is key to supporting the pawn advance.